Hello, my name is Pastor Tom, and I am with Grace Community Church, and this is the Salt and Send podcast. It's a weekly podcast where we explore elements from our Sunday morning gatherings, our Wednesday evening gatherings, as well as cultural events and goings on in our community. We hope that this conversation finds you well, and that you will use this podcast as a supplement to your faith and to your local church body that you attend. Thank you for watching and enjoy this episode. All right. Well, welcome back, Salt and Send. Here we are once again, continuing the Grace Church Studios, opportunity to bring you a little bit deeper into the Word of God, connect with you here this week. Hopefully by now you've had a chance not just to catch the last episode, but also the bonus episode with Tim, and what a blessing it is to be able to actually serve beside a guy like him. I consider him a mentor, even though I don't think he has the belief in himself to see himself that way. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but or that idea of belief in yourself. But let me start with a story. So we have this guy in our community that I used to work at a sporting goods store. And I was going through the newspaper when it was slow, and they had these stories that the police reports, basically, like different things. Guy got pulled over for DUI or whatever, And I'm reading this one that just said, known victim reported that someone had broken into his house and tried to access his gun safe, and had stolen and this is an exact quote, undisclosed number of fly swatters. And so, that catches your eye, and I chuckle about it, show it to some of my coworkers, and we all laugh and kind of move on. Well, a week or so later, I'm at an event here at our church, a marriage thing, and a young couple was here, and they've since moved out of the area, so they don't attend with us anymore. But I'm chatting with her husband, who's a state trooper, and just kind of bring up that event or that newspaper article, and just how funny I thought it was. And he's like, "If you want to hear something crazy, I'm the officer that responded to that call." And he gives me this full story about how this gentleman, deep in the throes of, I can't remember what it was, dementia or Alzheimer's, but some sort of kind of a mental affliction, and deep in the throes of that. And he finds himself convinced that someone has broken into his house and has stolen all his fly swatters, and he has, tried to get the police involved so that he can, I don't know, get his fly swatters back. I don't know what he's trying to do, but so the officer starts his investigation, right? He's like, okay, how did the guy enter your house? Where did he come in? He goes, I think he came in through this upstairs window. He's like, okay. So he's like, he goes to the window and he looks, and the window is screwed shut, like, screwed down into the wall. And he's like, okay, did you screw that shut after the guy broke in? And he goes, no, it was always screwed shut, And he's like, okay, well, there's no sign that it was like kicked in or like broken or anything. He's like, did you replace the window? He's like, no, it's that window. He's like, well, how did he get in then? He's like, well, I believe he has a universal garage door opener. And so he's like, he pushed the button, opened the garage door, came inside my house, and then he unscrewed the window, went back out, opened the window, and came in. And so he has this whole thing working out, and like, obviously to you and I, we're like, that none of that makes sense. But in his mind, he felt that he was convinced that someone had accessed his house. They must have come in through the window, and he had to find a way that they could. And reasonably, if someone had a universal garage door opener and the inclination to come through that window, that's probably the steps it would have to have taken. So he opens the guy's window, or that's where he lands, and so they do their whole investigation. They can't see where there's any problems or anything, but of course they gotta file it, right? They went on the call, and it ends up in the newspaper. but what was kind of I was talking with another officer here at our church, and I was like, what is have you responded to any calls with this guy? Because I knew him, I knew the victim from a prior church I'd gone to when I was growing up, and he's like, yeah, that guy's got some stuff going on, and he was just like, he's the problem isn't that he has dementia and Alzheimer's. All kinds of people have that. The problem is that his wife affirms those things that he believes. Now, I would argue it's okay at times to affirm someone in that space. If they'll say like, where's my cat? And you're just like, oh, it must be outside. And you don't want to say it died 10 years ago. Because every time you tell them, like, it breaks their heart again, So I get kind of that idea of not being rude, and
Sure.
and affirming that stuff. But at the same time, it's like
in a police report, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, you need to be like this. There's a time and a place for that. So, anyway, the point being, what we have in our society, I think there are mental illnesses that are happening right now. We're going to talk about for our Wednesday and our Sunday. That not necessarily mental illnesses, but just bad ideas that don't connect to reality or don't connect to truth. And how do we lovingly communicate? I don't envy at all that you feel the way you feel, but this isn't true.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's really, we were kind of talking about this earlier. It's really difficult in today's age because with social media, you'll have so many people affirming something that's honestly pretty ridiculous.
You can find thousands of people to affirm whatever it is that you believe. Because we are living in what I think it was 2019. The word of the year was post-truth, and meaning that we live in a post-truth culture, which is that, and the definition of that word was when your feelings trump abject fact.
Yeah, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, you haven't heard that?
No.
And so that was, I think it was 2019. That was the word of the year was post-truth. And that's probably about the time that a lot of this stuff spun up, where people, and kind of the reason we're talking about it is because in our Wednesday study, we talked about a little bit about this, and then Sunday morning too. But there's a very real difference between I stumbled into sin and then on the other side being I justify what I'm doing as right and good, even though it's not. And
you've made it a practice,
right? And so that would be, what would we say the title of this one would be the when practice becomes patterns or something like that, and it is that idea of like I've made a practice out of this thing, and now I'm not just leave me alone and I want to do my own thing. It's I need you to, at the very least, celebrate with me that what I'm doing is right and good when I can't do that.
Right, or certainly not speak against it.
Yeah.
Because if you disagree with my views, then you're attacking me.
Yeah. But we've also heard that silence is violence. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase or not.
I have.
And where it's like, okay, I can't just be like, if you're going to do your thing, I'm just going to leave you to it. No. You need to speak an affirmation of, and not just be silent on the matter.
Yeah, that's everywhere these days, and on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and the politics, of course. Yeah. And that's where, one of the reasons why we started this show was just to say, like, how can we connect with our church and help them see some of the stuff that's going down in a way that's going to encourage them to combat the lies of the world, and then do that from a biblical perspective and standpoint.
Yeah.
So, Wednesday night, we dove into chapter 6 of Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire. It's called A Time for Shaking, which was, uh, literal. The Lord is shaking the church, telling it to wake up. And anyone who's ever raised kids or been a kid themselves knows what it's like to be shaken awake, or to have to shake someone awake. Like I don't know about how your dad seems a lot more gentle than mine in his parenting approach. But
My dad?
yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh no,
I
mine.
got the belt and the swatting spoon on a regular basis.
Oh yeah. We had a paddle, and like that my dad had cut out of wood. We have a paddle at our house that I had found in kindling on vacation. We needed a paddle, and I was like, oh, let's go see what we can find. I found one, and it has a big knot in it, and I'm telling for when they're naughty. Anyway, and I had another friend actually had his dad had a paddle that he'd written on it just like in Sharpie, but it was like from the Board of Education to the Seat of Understanding, and it was Pete Finch.
Okay.
So his dad had written that on there, and it was kind of funny. But I don't think the Finch kids ever really got smacked. But anyhow, they were all two good kids. But he so like my dad would come into my room, throw blankets off, flip you over, when you were small enough, and like if you just did a 180 in the air, you're like, okay, I'm awake now, and it would help get you up. My mom would yell from the kitchen. That was kind of her system. She'd be like, "Get up!" And then like, but Dad took things to a physical level, but it was that like shake it awake. We have to feel the burden of the world in which we're in, and I think in a lot of ways, we're in a situation we're in not because the church has completely taken its hands off. I think that we got here at the pace we did because the church took its hands off. It seems to me the world was always going to get to this destination. The speed and tempo by which it got there, the church kind of had. Can it push that darkness backwards long enough until the return of Christ, or is it going to let it come fast, or is it going to let it come slow? Is kind of the question.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's tough now because everyone wants to be so gentle about everything.
Right.
Nobody wants to say something that's going to trigger someone. Because, and again, like times are different now with social media. You say something and they'll just take a clip of what you said, and it's completely out of context. But if you use the wrong sequence of words in something that you say, it's everywhere. And I think that's made us people who either have a platform or, particularly, in ministry and stuff like that, where you're going to be criticized for what you say.
For sure.
No matter what. Somebody's going to criticize you for what you say. Like, I think it's conditioned those type of people to be ultra careful and conservative with what they say. And as a consequence, or a result of that, maybe churches or these pastors or whoever aren't speaking out when either they feel called to or just know it's right, but maybe not a right climate that they're willing to speak in.
Yeah. The heart of the listener, I think, captures our attention more than it ought to. Because I do think sometimes you have to just plant the seed and understand, like, because a lot are like, I could say something, but it's not going to do anything. Well, yeah, harvest isn't your role. Planting the seed is. And so you can say what you need to say. Hey, this is what we believe and think is right and good, without expecting them to change their life on the spot. And I think that's where a lot of guys get caught up. But I look too around the world, and I feel like, for just for example, here's you want to know my greatest frustration with our current president?
Okay.
He doesn't speak he doesn't use language specifically. So
What do you mean by that?
he doesn't speak with clarity. He'll speak in
Mm.
generalizations, or he'll kind of exaggerate, and
Mm.
then when he's not prudent with the way things he says, what he's saying might be correct, but you have to. There's no nuance to it. He just says what he says and then moves on. And so I think, like, a lot of times, like this moment we're in right now, you need to be very specific in the way you speak,
Yeah.
especially from the platform that he stands on. And so, when he stands up and he says about the riots that happened in Charlottesville, that now we understand were funded by the SPLC, which is exciting. But
Mm.
when he stands up and says there's fine people on both sides, he was just unspecific in his language and gave people an ability to go after him. Because and here's an argument: do you think our president believes Antifa are fine people?
Certainly not.
Well, there's the
Yeah.
argument falls apart. But not to mention that one sentence later he says, "And I'm not talking about the white supremacists; they should be condemned in total." And so you're like, okay, it's exactly what you said. It got clipped out of context.
Right.
And so I think a lot of guys get very worried. They're like, if I'm unspecific in any way, I can be clipped out of context, and then I've got to go back and explain. And so it's just it's a tough thing to it's a tough world to communicate in.
Well, and that's one of the things too. So, I'm not really familiar with this exact quote, but
Yeah.
just so that I'm understanding, he said that there were good people on both sides.
So
And people objected to that.
Yeah. So what happened was, I'll give you the breakdown. Charlottesville, Virginia, there were some statues of Robert E. Lee that were to come down. Now,
Right.
Robert E. Lee is he's royalty in Virginia.
Mm.
He was a Virginia man.
Yep.
He fought for the South. He was a brilliant military leader. I may be wrong. You can fact check me on this, but I believe he was anti-slavery. But he was he couldn't fight against his home state, was kind of one of his things. And so he did the hard job of leading the Confederate Army. And actually, for a hunk of time, it looked like he was going to be successful, And so Robert E. Lee is Southern royalty in Virginia. And
Right.
and he he goes and so there's statues of him that people are now trying to pull down, which I disagree with. I don't agree that Robert E. Lee stood on the right principles or on the right side of history on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that I think Robert E. Lee is a lesson for us all to learn, or he has a lesson for us all to learn. What do you think? What did it come up as? Fact check.
So, what Google is saying is that basically, privately, he would say that slavery was a moral and political evil.
Yeah.
But there's some contradictions, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's what I thought. I thought I had read that, like, somewhere it said he wasn't really in favor in total, like people want to believe he was. He was fighting for his home state, and so yeah. There were some people that wanted to tear the statue down, and there was people that wanted the statue to stay up, and so Donald Trump is speaking of those two groups that came in protest. Well, in the midst of that protest, Antifa comes, the anti-fascist movement that acts very fascist, and then the Proud Boys showed up, and there was a clash, and some white supremacist groups showed up, and there was this clash, this fight that happened in the middle of Charlottesville, Virginia, and it riots and all kinds of stuff goes down, and I mean, police get involved, it goes crazy, and the president speaks on it, and he's speaking of, he's like, there's these people that want to tear the statue down, there's fine people on both sides, saying, like, on both, there's fine people who want the statue gone and fine people who want it to stay. And he wasn't talking about the fighters in that moment, but the people on the statue debate. And so, but since he wasn't specific in his language, it was easy to take it out of context.
Yeah. So what I would say, is good people can fight on the wrong side of things.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, especially, and I've got a lot of friends who are pretty liberal,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got some views that are liberal leaning,
Sure.
but generally speaking, when it comes to the big issues,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty firm
Yeah.
in the conservative space.
Are you talking on like a political standpoint?
Yes.
Okay. Not like faith and
And
morality, but yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I always say is, so my social media feed
Mm-hmm.
knows my stance
Mm-hmm.
on a lot of those topics. So I will get bombarded with affirming
Yep.
videos
Yep.
and stuff like that. However, my friends who are, in the liberal camp,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be bombarded with stuff that affirms, their position.
Yeah.
And to be honest, some of the things are pretty convincing.
Yeah.
If you just take it at face value.
Right. Right.
So I would say
Mm-hmm.
that there are a lot of people that are deceived
Yeah.
into siding with something that they think that
Yeah.
they agree with, but don't necessarily.
Yeah, because they're not hearing another argument or the other side of that coin. They're not looking at it that way. So they end up kind of getting pulled in, and then like you were kind of saying there, like they end up beginning to compromise some of their own standards because, in large part, because they feel like everyone believes this because all they see, and they believe, okay, this is the direction of the majority.
Yes.
Therefore, maybe my assumptions are incorrect and I need to change. And instead of saying like, and this is something like I attribute it to my grandma, but I said it at her funeral, and was like, I don't need you to agree with me to know I'm right. Like, it's just not something that's necessary for me to understand and to know, is that that if you can agree or disagree, doesn't matter to me at all. I'm going to stand firm in my conviction. And now there are times where someone says, okay, you're right, you don't have to agree with me at all. However, let me show you what we're looking at, because maybe you're not looking at it fully, and they can kind of open your eyes to the reality of what's going on. So the point of kind of Wednesday night's talk was this passage where Jesus says, "You're lukewarm. I wish you were hot or cold, or else I'll spit you." Which I always thought was so strange. Like, why either one or the other? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is one better than the other? Is there a right direction to be, hot or cold? And so it always kind of perplexed me, because wouldn't it say, like Jesus say, like, I really wish you were hot. Like, I don't want you lukewarm. I don't want you cold.
Why
I
you
want
on
you hot.
fire?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I thought about and kind of prayed through and studied this for Wednesday night, I was like, what he's warning against is just assuming the temperature of the room around you, and like, you don't want to become the same as the environment in which you're in. You need to be starkly different than the environment you're in. And so whether that be like because in a hot environment, you want a cold drink, right? In a cold environment, you want a hot drink, and it kind of goes that way.
Yeah.
And you want to, what you're craving is actually something starkly different than what you're in. And in a lukewarm environment, like I have my coffee here, but it's in this thermos because I want it to be warm,
Sure. Stay that way.
Yeah, and whenever it's this room temperature, I'm going to pour it out, or I'm going to throw it in the microwave and get it hot again, which is I think there's some implications there when it comes to it will assume room temperature unless acted on by something outside.
Right.
Yeah. So whether that be like it's in a fridge, and that, or something is pumping cold into it, or something's making it hot, there's something that's causing that. You know,
Yeah.
there's something else that I guess in their culture when Jesus said that, they could probably ice would have probably been at a premium.
I would think so.
And you could probably get it, but it was hard to get your hands on. Whether it was trucked in with some kind of like sawdust insulation or something like that that would help keep it cold. But if they could get their hands on it, it was that outside thing that was placed in the drink that dropped the temperature.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's different.
Yeah. And so I think that's the idea. I don't know what your thoughts are, but it's just don't assume room temp.
Yeah. I never really thought about it like that before. In my mind, it was kind of, hot because we talk about, being on fire,
Yeah.
as something that's desirable for a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would read it before, it was like either be hot or cold.
Yeah.
So at least you can't try to justify,
Right.
anything. Like
Right.
if you're going to go the wrong way, just
go the wrong way.
Yeah, just go the wrong way.
Yeah. But that's where I was like, and I think I like I think that can work too. Where Jesus is trying to say, just make a decision, man.
Yeah.
Like don't just ride the fence. Don't just assume the temp of the room that you're in. Like if you're gonna be bad, be bad.
But in my mind, that's
Yeah.
for Jesus to say that's pretty contradictory to.
It seems that way, because like I think the argument would be at least you're not deceived. Like you're heading for destruction and you're headed for destruction.
Right.
And I would argue doing ministry in a rural area where people are basically pretty moral is really tough because it's hard to convince people that they need a savior.
Yeah.
That's an argument I make. So yeah, that was our Wednesday night. We kind of dove into that idea of the Lord shaking us awake and moving us in a direction, and His mercy when He's doing that He's not just He's not just shaking us to make sure that we are uncomfortable, but He is trying, I think, in a lot of ways to save us from our own comforts, because comfort has a way of lulling us into complacency.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think it kind of ties into, well, I think we're going to talk about it when we get into the sermon. But this, there's going back to the whole lukewarm thing, like the analogy of like your coffee.
Yeah.
I think everything naturally, with no intention behind it, everything naturally kind of moves towards the median.
Yeah, equilibrium. It wants to find that, and that's like, I think you hit it on the head where it's like this is the natural inclination. It is going to want to drift towards this. It takes concerted, intentional effort to not drift into foolishness or to not drift into sin and unwise behaviors and living. This is the thing. Like you have to actually consider how to make this work.
Right. So if you're trying to live a righteous lifestyle, and you stop trying to live that way, you've got good habits, and everything, but you just kind of go on autopilot.
Yeah.
I think you're going to start gravitating towards lukewarm without realizing it. And likewise, I think people that are inherently trying to do evil things, I think that they gravitate towards lukewarm too when they stop, hanging on to whatever rage they have or whatever's, motivating them to do wrong things.
Yeah.
And I think you see that a lot too. When you see stories of people that have turned their lives around, a lot of times it's when they're older.
Yeah.
And they just get tired
of
trying to intentionally do wrong.
Right.
And so it's tough because we know from Scripture that being lukewarm is not a place that we want to be.
Right. Yeah.
But you're inherently going to gravitate towards it without perpetual intention.
Yeah. 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 And that's where it gets difficult. Is Yeah, and this is why I think we're commanded in Scripture. Like I can't think of where it's at. Uh, don't grow weary in doing good.
Mm.
And because there is that propensity to be like, oh man, I'm getting worn down.
Mm-hmm.
And there's times that you should probably go and be refreshed, but at the same time, there's time to say like, listen, this life is pretty short, and so I can push hard for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And you can do that. So that's kind of the stuff that we tried to bring out Wednesday night, was that idea, that warning against, like you said, going to the median, or just kind of finding yourself at base level, or on a soundboard. We call it unity. That
Right.
everything wants to be at unity.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that's in a world that I shouldn't want to be unified with. I need to be cranked
Right.
up, and so that's and it's where Jim Cymbala was trying to kind of realize, like, his church, if they didn't remain dependent on the Lord, were going to drift into that.
Mm.
And because no one is complacent when they're desperate. Like, desperation doesn't breed complacency. It breeds action, and,
Yeah.
and
when
that's the hope.
when Jim in his book talks about when the church is praying together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a book. I'm reading it, but in my
Yeah.
mind, it's a pretty emotive, time. Like, they're praying desperately.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, how many times do we like
Mm-hmm.
have a muscle memory prayer
Right.
that we can be saying a prayer and our mind could be on something completely different.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
is that really prayer?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying words?
Right. And I think I would argue that you're just saying words, like,
Mhm.
and that's the spot you're in, because Jesus even talked about that. He's like, Pharisees are just heaping up empty words, man. And like,
Mhm.
this is the way. He's like, don't you pray that way,
Right.
and and it is just bringing your whole self to the Lord, and which leads us into Sunday. So Hosea, we're part 2 in Hosea. We used words a lot that people might be angry about, and so,
Yeah.
but they and one of the warnings I gave the church Sunday was, I understand from stage you don't hear words like whore that often, from stage. However, don't be more offended that you've heard that from a church than you are that you live that out on your daily life. Like, one of these is worse. And so,
Yeah, maybe you should put some context behind living that out.
right.
What do you mean?
Yeah. And so, as in spiritually, I am going to worship other things. I'm going to seek after other sources of satisfaction, as opposed to wholly devoting myself to my Lord and Savior, and as Hosea would call it, husband, Jesus Christ, which is, I'm trying to break that down for us Sunday, this coming Sunday, which will be about 2 weeks for the listener, I think, but well, they'll hear it. But they will hear us try and kind of break down the idea of, when he says husband, what he's not referencing is any kind of eroticism. What he's talking about is a covenant relationship where self-sacrifice and submission are the standard for both parties, and where faithfulness is expected, and demanded, quite honestly.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the idea, is that kind of relationship. We think husband and wife, and we think female and male, and we think, all these things enter our mind. The relationship is one that's built in covenant faithfulness. And so, I think for a lot of men, that's a struggle to walk in, is I'm to look at God as my husband. That's weird, especially for straight men. And so, and in a culture that is as sexually charged as ours is. And so, like, you're not going to convince me that isn't a part of Satan's strategy to say, like, if I can make the kind of the homosexual movement and the church in such odds with one another, that when the time comes for men in the church to look at Christ as husband, that it doesn't freak them out a little bit, and try and get them to where they kind of walk away from it. So that's one of the things that kind of is coming out of this Hosea study, which is like, stop for a second. No, look at it change your mind a little bit. We're talking covenant faithfulness. We're not talking that you're the female in the relationship. We're not talking those gendered roles. It's, and how that plays out. We're talking something different. So, but at the same time, what other example do we have? Like, how else can we structure that?
Yeah. And I mean, it's all meant to be a really powerful
image.
Yeah, image of what Israel is doing to Yahweh. You know? And I mean, I don't know how you could better describe the betrayal.
Yeah.
Than that of a wife, committing adultery. And same for a husband committing adultery. It's a betrayal.
Yeah.
I can't think of too many, things that would be more destructive to a person than going through something like that.
Yeah, which is why Scripture uses that imagery, because it resonates with everyone. Like, there isn't a person out there that's like, because that hasn't either known someone who's walked through infidelity or walked in it themselves. And so it is. And then Jesus, of course, in his teachings, ups the ante and says, like, even if you're looking at women in a lustful way, like, hey man, you're in the same boat. And you're like, oh man, like, I've done that. And like, so because it does help keep us from being like, that could never be me. Because we could look at the Lord and be like, I would, and Peter actually does it, out loud. But Peter was known to do things out loud. But he's like, I will never betray you. And Jesus is like, you're going to do it in the next like 45 minutes. It's like, it's coming down the line, buddy.
Yeah. And 3 times.
Yeah. You're not going to do it once. And so, and that goes to the kind of what we tried to talk about Sunday a little bit, which was when it becomes practice. Because there is the occasional sin. There is the occasional, I lingered too long on the bikini photo on my Facebook feed. Like, there is that happens. But when it becomes practice, like, and I go and I seek and I make it something that I'm constantly, like, it's just a part of my week, that's when things become really, really clear that it's not just, oops, I made a mistake. And I can repent of that and move on. I need serious heart work, because somewhere in me, my conscience is no longer catching this. What I mean?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think it's oftentimes so gradual that it goes by unnoticed. Kind of like we were talking about the other day when we were discussing what we were going to say in the podcast. Yeah. Like, the example I used was, if you look just like in American cinema, if you look at, an old Western movie, it was the ability for a man to resist temptation from a woman to draw him into
extramarital activities.
And immorality.
Yeah.
His ability to withstand that temptation was considered manly. I mean, that was manly.
Mark of a man. Yep.
And then fast forward a couple decades, all of a sudden,
sexual
how
conquest.
many suitors that you can, have. Now that's the more manly you are.
Right.
And then even further, the women's empowerment movement kind of takes that bad progression and like, well, if they can do it,
then so
we can do it too.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing now.
Right.
For us to be able to do it.
Right. But it's still bad that he does. And this is where, once again, we look at like where not just the conscience is seared here, but where bad ideas are being affirmed. And we can say without hesitation, like, it's wrong for him to do it. It's wrong for you to do it. You
Mhm.
would argue it's wrong for him to do it, but now you're saying it's right for you to do it because he gets to do it.
Right.
And like, this isn't mental gymnastics. You have to actively shut down moral voices to get to that space.
Wrong is always wrong.
Yeah, wrong's wrong. There isn't like I slept around on my husband, but I had a really good reason. Like no one's gonna argue like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, yeah, it's okay that you committed adultery.
Right.
You know.
You might have had good reason to feel the way you feel.
Yeah.
But you did not have good reason to take the action that you took.
For sure. Yeah. And it's that extra step. So as we kind of walked in that idea of covenant faithfulness, spiritual adultery, trying not to make patterns of bad behavior, we talked a little bit about how Jesus Christ pulls you back in, and we actually ended the service on communion, which is we do it quarterly, but also it's a great reminder that we do have a Savior who is reaching for us. And the chief way he did that, he showed, or is what communion shows, which is he came and died on the cross for our sin. And so it was a really good service. But one of the things I wanted to point out that didn't make it in the sermon comes from Matthew 28. So Matthew 28, 16 through 20. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach them to observe all I've commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Now, I bring that passage up for two reasons. One, this is the second way, or I would argue the second greatest way, that Jesus proves that he is in pursuit of us, and that's that he has sent people to come find you and to draw you into relationship with him. There's disciple makers. There's people that are evangelizing that want to pull you out of darkness into light, pull you out of sin into the glory of God. That's what they're trying to do. The other thing I notice here is on the side of the discipler, that idea of some doubted. So like this is where, because the idea is, and we chatted about it earlier off camera, but he was like, he's not with a crowd of 500. Mm-hmm. Now the 11 disciples went to get and so it's the 11, the 12 disciples minus Judas, that were with Jesus front to back, beginning of his ministry, end of his ministry, saw him killed, saw him resurrected, walk forward, and it says some doubted. And if we don't, this is where studying the Bible matters, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you just read it, you say they didn't believe in Jesus, which I don't think is what they're saying there.
No.
I think it sounds to me, because the word doubted in the Greek is only used one other time in Scripture, and that's, like I said to you, which is where Peter gets out of the boat and walks towards Jesus, and then when he looks around at the waves, he sinks. It wasn't a faith in Jesus issue. It was a faith in Peter's calling issue, mm-hmm. Not a faith in Peter issue. Peter knew he was deficient. That's why he sank in the water. Mm-hmm. And Peter knew Jesus was enough. That's why he stepped out of the boat. But the calling, when the pressure was on, the calling got to where he's like, I don't know if this is for me. And he began to sink. And Jesus pulls him over. I was like, dude, where's your faith? Like, just keep looking at me. You'll be all right. I'll walk you through the calling. And so the disciples here, because the context of Matthew 28 is the Great Commission, go into the world, make disciples, baptizing them all nations. Like, this is, you 11 are going to go out into the world and turn it upside down for my glory.
And I will be with you till the end of the age.
And I'll be with you till the end of the age. And the doubt that they had, it sounds like to me here, isn't, I don't think Jesus is enough for me. The argument is, I don't know if I can complete this calling.
Sure.
Which is true,
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so
alone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But with Christ, when he walks in, I'll be with you to the end of the age. There you go. Like that should have evaporated the doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy when you're put on the spot to be like, oh, wait a minute, I don't think I'm equipped for this.
Yeah,
and I always think of like COVID.
Yeah,
It was a great test to see how homeschooling would go in our
Yeah.
house. Um,
Was
you
it
know,
for you?
well, here's the thing. I understood everything that the kids were going, and I could help them with it.
Yeah.
But articulating it in a way that they absorb
Right.
is not something that I've been trained in. I don't have a teaching degree.
Right.
And it was a lot more challenging than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Like simple algebra, like
Yeah.
I could do that in my sleep. This will be easy.
Right.
I'm like, why don't you understand? Like,
Yeah,
what
why
am I doing wrong?
Yeah, I can't explain
because
it to
I
a
know
seventh grader.
you're
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And algebra's probably a bad example because my kids have all been phenomenal at it. But like, there was lots of stuff that like I just couldn't, and it was my fallacy.
Yeah.
In my ability to, to transfer the information in a way that they could digest. And so, we've talked about homeschooling before, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm equipped for it. And I think that that's probably, and if we try to do it, I'm sure it would work out great.
Yeah. Or if you felt like, for whatever reason, I really believe God's moving us in this direction, we're going to figure it out. And
Yes.
yeah, and that's where, like, because a lot of Christians, I think, get beat up and tired in ministry because they just stepped into spaces that really aren't theirs to step into,
Right.
and so they kind of take a little bit of their licks on that, and then they're like, oh, why didn't this work out? It's like, well, God didn't. He wasn't walking with you in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what He had for you,
Mm.
and so I do believe that we are all called to serve, but that doesn't mean we're all called to serve in the same way.
Right.
Yeah, which actually leads us into the cultural segment a little bit. We've already been on it a bit, and actually started with it, and it's kind of worked its way in there. But here's a question I guess I would ask from that aspect. The Christian is called to be in the world, but not of it, right? The Christian is called to be a part of the culture, but not influenced by the culture. How do you square up being relevant inside of a culture so that you're not like, we're not, living in Old Testament ways, right? Where we're refusing to wear clothing with mixed fabrics, and all that stuff.
Right.
Well, how do you remain culturally relevant so that you're not dismissed as just being, out of date, but at the same time hold to a moral standard that many in our culture would say is not relevant any longer? Even churches, I think it was it might have been, it was either a Lutheran or Methodist church pastor that said, we need a third testament because the New Testament isn't hitting us right, and so like, how do we stay culturally relevant and yet like not be influenced by it in our morality? I don't know if I have a good answer, but
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, as far as the Third Testament goes, I would argue there is one, and it's us. We are that Third Testament. We are supposed to be an embodiment of what is to be like Christ.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. When I say, we need a third covenant. There's the Old Testament, New Testament. Now we need a third one because those two are out of date.
Right.
Okay. And so like, I see what you're saying when you say testament. We're the witness. Like,
yes.
Like,
yeah.
we're that next witness. And I see that. What that lady was saying was the Bible is no longer in date. We need one that matches our times. And so I like, because we have this argument. You've sat in our leadership team. We've talked about this. We try to keep the building pretty relevant as far as paint and decorations, technology inside the building. For a small church, we are probably one of the most technologically adept churches in our area, for sure.
Sure.
And so we try and keep things relevant in that regard because people will just automatically assume, oh, it doesn't have anything for me here because it's irrelevant. It's outdated. And so at the same time, we are, you know, I guess maybe the question is, how do you separate out, uh, like how, what is timeless, right? And
Mm.
what is cultural standards of the time? Like
Yeah.
how do you split those things out?
Well, so we want to meet people where they are.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can't um, completely reject everything outside of our walls.
Yeah.
Like, we have to uh, be able to integrate in with the world.
Yeah.
But I think, and if I'm getting the essence of your question.
I'm stumbling over it because I've put together like 4 questions that I had in my notes. But,
Yeah, my response would be that you don't intentionally. I don't even know, but I think if you hold firm and you are persistent, Paul talks about
yeah.
persistence in the faith a lot. Let God take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Don't compromise to be a part of the world, but be the same within the world. Does that make sense?
Yes. So kind of the way that I felt like the Lord speaking to me in this was in 2 ways. One of the ways I will very quickly become about the culture that I'm in and not about the timeless truth of God's word is when I become so inwardly focused that I'm looking at myself and not the world around me. I will seek to ensure that my self-image,
Yeah.
as far as what others see.
If I say this, how am I going to sound to the
Yes.
people around me?
Yeah. And so when I become so inwardly focused that my glory matters more than the world around, or more than the Lord's does, then I will begin to absorb the world's stuff.
Yeah.
Because of that. The other thing is when it talks about being in the world, not of it, it doesn't mean it being in means like I'm a part of, and I am like even Paul talked about cultural trends and gods and different things that he had studied and read on these things. It's okay for you to be well read and understanding of the world in which you live. You should be, I would argue. When it says don't be of the world, like don't be owned by it. Like who do I belong to, and not losing sight of that. So a friend of mine, Trent Kirkland, every time his kids would leave the house, he would say to them, "Don't forget who you are and whose you are." And that was such a great phrase, and we say it to our kids now because like it is a good reminder that like, one, you have an identity that isn't this world, and 2, you belong to someone who isn't this world. And
is way greater.
Yeah. And so that's the idea, when it comes to like not allowing yourself into patterns of sin and not allowing the world to stain you. It's really just leaning into who you are and who you belong to.
Yeah.
So this week, as we kind of wrap up, we say goodbye to a very cherished member of our congregation. My wife and I actually, she tracked us down when we first came to the church, and she's like, "You're a young married couple, and I think you need to buy a really, really nice house." And my house is that house. So her name is Val Jean Shook, and she did have a very nice house, and we did buy it. And it's been a great place to raise our kids. And she attended our church for 65 years, but last week she fell. She's 98 years old. She'd be 91 on June 1st. Or 99, sorry, on June 1st. She still believed herself to be 90. Like they couldn't convince her she wasn't 90. She wanted to live in her youth, I guess. I don't know. But she loved everyone here and loved us all deeply. In fact, if you see a little blip in the recording, one of our other 99-year-old ladies here at the church thought her funeral was today and not next week. And she popped in and scared me pretty good. So like I my heart's still going, I think, over that. But she passed away after surgery. She had hurt her hip or her leg or something when she fell and passed away. Didn't recover from surgery. So So we have her funeral service this Friday, or this Saturday coming up, and we're looking forward to that. Val Jean Shook, beautiful, beautiful child of God, and outside of that, I can't think of a whole lot that's going on. I know on June 6th we have our work day here at the church, so if you're willing to pop in and help out, I know our folks would be very, very thankful for the extra hands to give them a hand. I can't think of much else. Can you think of what else is going on the calendar?
No, other than softball, June 2nd.
Oh yeah, that June 2nd start. Is that our first game?
That's the first game. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good thing we've practiced. We
did like 2 or 3 years ago once.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we practiced. But yeah, if I pull up the calendar and I look at it, we have our church cleanup day. Our VBS training is on June 7th, Sunday, June 7th. So that's just in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Also on June 13th is the Victory in the Valley concert. So it's a free concert down in New Bethlehem at the Red Bank Valley Municipal Park. So you can go down and you can check that out and be a part of that. Other than that, we of course have our midweek Bible studies. You can catch that online. If we can link we'll try and link in the show notes the link,
Discord server.
The Discord server for that. You can jump on and join us on Wednesday nights. And of course our youth are still meeting. So our youth, the next meeting for them will be June 14th. So that's coming up in just a week or two. So yeah, those are the things that are on the calendar that we have coming up. The youth are also going to what's called the Encounter Conference. So that's June 17th.
It's a couple days.
Yeah, 17th, 18th, and 19th. Yeah, it's a couple of days, a weekend thing. But I think they're meeting here at the church, and they'll bus them back and forth because it's just down in Katanning. So yeah, those are the events. Those are the things coming down the line. I can't think of much else that we have to announce, but can you?
No, I think that's it. I would encourage everyone to check out Victory in the Valley.
Yeah,
I forgot about it. I have no idea who's playing this year, to be perfectly honest.
Selah is the headliner. They've been around since I was a kid.
Yeah, but it's always for a free concert in essentially the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
they do such a great job.
Yeah,
I've been really, really enjoyed. I think I've been 4 years. I think.
Yeah, and we're one of the partner churches, so we give a decent chunk of change to it, and we make sure that it gets going and does what it's supposed to do. So
yeah. And other than that, and I would also encourage you, the VBS training.
Yeah.
If you have any interest in serving or thought like, I'd like to help do something, it is such a great way to gradually get involved.
Yeah, we need help from everything there. Like, we need help from parking cars to serving food to clean up after. Like, everything needs help. We have our crew from Michigan coming back this year, which will be great, but still need help in every
and it's
regard.
nice because a lot of people really get together and put a lot of work in.
Yeah.
So it's not like sometimes when you volunteer for something and it's you and like 2 other people.
Yeah.
And,
and I would argue,
it's awkward.
I mean, especially for your wife and some of the other ladies, some of the deepest relationships forged at the church happened during VBS setup and tear down, and so it is a great opportunity. Like you said, if you want to slowly integrate into the church body, like that's on you. You got to do that yourself, and because I see people walk in the door and then they'll leave and they'll be like, I just didn't feel welcome. It's like, well, we did what we could do. If you're not willing to, because I look at like the Barretts, both sets. I look at Laverno's, people who just, nothing. The only thing special about them was that they decided we are going to be a part of this place and we're going to be in the life of it. And they just inserted themselves in.
Yeah.
And I know that's not everyone's personality. But there's some effort on your end if you want to be a part of the life of something that you have to put yourself in it.
Right.
So, and helping clean up or set up VBS is a huge way to do that.
Yeah. So if you're interested at all, reach out to someone in the church. They'll point you in the right direction and be ready for that training coming up.
Yeah. And then finally, if our conversations have been enlightening to you, please consider hitting the like button, subscribe, share it with some friends so that we're able to continue to reach more people. We're seeing good good amount of people connecting with it. So we're
Awesome.
thanking God that there's an opportunity that people can hear the gospel in another fashion. you
Yeah.
know. So,
Yeah. Oh, and another thing I just thought of now
Yeah.
that I meant to do later. I think I'm going to create a church podcast at gcccarlsville.org.
okay. Yeah.
That way people could email if they have
Yeah.
questions, want to tell us how wrong we were about something, or
Perfect, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, if you want to give to the church, you can jump on gcccarlsville.org. There is that's our website, and you can find the giving tab there under that. So, yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for listening. This is episode 19. We'll catch you on the next one.